So they come to settle here, and that's where William Patrick Hitler is born. He is definitely the Liverpool Hitler. Now, I don't know whether anybody wants to tell Mayor Anderson about this. I did wonder whether we could have a Hitler theme park weekend. We've had everything else. We've had the Giants, we've had all this, the Penguins, the Lambananas. Well, yeah, even Buddy agrees with me. He's having a shake over there. Why don't we have an Adolf Hitler theme park weekend? I'm only teasing. But William Patrick is born here in 1911. Now, they live at 102 Stanhope Street. Now, some books have said 103, but it is 102. Now, these were flats. Amazingly enough, they were damaged in the last German air raid on Liverpool, the 10th of January, 1942. There were 68 air raids on Merseyside from August 1940 to this last one on the 10th of Jan, 1942. And did they know? No, they could not have done. That one of the places they damaged was the flat on where William Patrick was born. Now, many of the books describe, Wikipedia, for instance, says Toxteth Park, fair enough, but really we do know from many other sources that is the address. I think it was grassed over later on. I've no idea what's there now, but as I say, the flats were damaged. Now, this air raid, as I said, on 1942. Now, it was Bridget who claimed that Adolf, that's William Patrick's mum. It was Bridget Dowling Hitler who claimed in her book that Adolf stayed with them for a few months, 1912 to 1913. But in all fairness, the publishers probably would have insisted on her putting that in the book. Imagine how many more copies it would sell in England and the US if it were true. And it's all right. I mean, she's quite detailed about it. She says he had his own favourite breakfasts and where he liked to go for his sandwich, and how he liked his coffee in one particular shop, and how he'd talk about art and talk about painting and bore them all to death about the decadence of the Vienna scene and all that stuff. So it's an interesting enough book. It sold reasonably well, it would do. And she said he stayed because he was on the run from the Austrian army. There's no records because you didn't need them then. It was before the age of passports, really, so that's why she claimed there was no record of him staying. There was no photographs. She did say, actually, that two photographs were taken, but she was unable to find them by the time the book was published. Now, what about Alois, then? Well, he tried all sorts. He ran a restaurant in Dale Street, which was quite near the town hall there now, which failed. He then ran a boarding house in Upper Parliament Street, which, guess what, failed. And then he tried his hand at a hotel in Mount Pleasant, a commercial travellers hotel. Now, there were lots of them. It failed again, apparently. Now, he then went back to Germany. He went to Germany. This is Alois now we're talking. He went back to Germany, leaving his son and Bridget in Liverpool. And he gets involved in the safety razor blade business. Now, we're still with Alois now. He then goes back to Berlin, as I said, goes back and stays in Berlin. Then he gets married again. Now, bear in mind, he's already married to Bridget, but he marries a new German wife in 1916, and they have children. And he knew Bridget was still alive. She did believe he was dead. She was told at the end of the war that he was dead. He certainly wasn't. rather interestingly, in 1924, when Alois Hitler was prosecuted for bigamy, guess who saved him? Bridget. She intervened on his behalf to disallow his prosecution on the grounds that there were reasonable grounds for him to think that she was dead. So imagine going to court and saying, I can understand why my husband married again, because he thought I was dead, but I wasn't. But that's what she said, and it was accepted, and he avoided a charge of bigamy. In fact, it gets more interesting. In the 1920s, that's the time of the Weimar Republic, William Patrick Hitler, now he is what, 10, 12, 13? No, yeah, he's 13, 1924. He then goes back to Germany to stay with his father, Alois, on a kind of, for a few months. So, in a funny sort of a way, they were still in contact. Now, it gets really fascinating now. Alois owned a restaurant in Berlin, and this one succeeded really, it did quite well. Not only did it do well, it stayed open till the end of the war. Now imagine, Berlin was in a hell of a state by the end. I mean, the air raids were just unbelievable, the Russians were approaching. But Alois kept his restaurant going right throughout the war. He was arrested by the British at the end of the war because they knew he was, but they could find no evidence at all that he was particularly Nazi or particularly attached to the party. He'd not received anything from Hitler, no help really. So he was released. He was not charged with anything at all. He died, in fact, in Hamburg in 1956. William Patrick marries in the United States later, but let's talk about his German visit. Now imagine this. Your Uncle Adolf comes to power as German Chancellor, 1933. Young William Patrick, the Liverpool Hitler, is 22 years of age. He goes back to Germany and he asks his Uncle Adolf for a job, which he gets. Well, he gets a bit of a job anyway. Now, when the job is not big enough, or good enough, or well paid enough, he then writes to his Uncle Adolf and says, if you don't get me a better job in the Reichsbank or whatever it is, I'll tell embarrassing stories about our childhood. I tell you what, he was on a sticky wicket there, ladies and gentlemen. That wasn't going to be a runner. And I don't think the reply he got was particularly advantageous.